Hobgoblins and witches and things that go bump in the night.
Hello and welcome to Evil Dread. This week, Lynn is off being an adult and presenting at a conference. Next week, we'll actually know what that is, as I've texted her to find out and have not heard back. So, I'm Wyeth, and I'm joined by special guest Anna Louise.
It's me, the girl who sounds a lot like Lynn, but is not quite. Lynn is in Albuquerque at the moment. She's presenting at Southwest Pop Culture Association conference. So yeah, that's exciting. Yay!
Yay! So take your bets as to whether she's presenting about vampires, serial killers, or Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I don't know. I feel like it was a paper she already wrote. That's kind of the standard conference thing, is you present truncated versions of work you've already done.
Are you saying that she doesn't already have multiple papers about
No,
any
I'm
of
saying
those
she has
subjects?
all of those papers, so I'm just trying to think of which one it would be. I don't know.
Well, stay tuned. So this week, Al has joined me for the return of Cloverfield.
Yes. Yeah, we did our double dose of Cloverfield episode when Lynn was she in Albuquerque last time we did this?
So when Lynn's away, the giant monsters will play.
I guess, yeah. So yeah, Cloverfield Paradox. Cloverfield 3, formerly known as The God Particle.
Good name.
A cooler title by far.
So this was a surprise.
Yeah.
It hasn't even been a week
I guess not, yeah.
Since this has come out. So if you're like me, I've been waiting on the next Cloverfield because the first Cloverfield was a big milestone for me. It was the first real American giant monster movie. And then fast forward 8 years and it got a sequel. And
sort of, yeah.
Of sorts. It had nothing to do with the first movie except for Slusho, which is the defining thing.
Yeah.
There's a running Easter egg.
Yeah.
And it was also a very good movie. Both the first movies are very good. And then there was rumors of a third movie in production.
Yeah. A tortured production for this film. A film that was bought or began production in 2012 as God Particle and was like an original story.
It really been that long?
Supposedly. Yeah, because that's kind of the MO of this series, is that it's like J.J. Abrams finds an original sci-fi story of some sort and then kind of mangles it into fitting with the Cloverfield universe.
But 10 Cloverfield Lane was not obtrusive.
No, it wasn't.
We'll get into that. But anyway, so
yeah, we are on the record in our previous Cloverfield episode as liking both.
Very pro Cloverfield.
Yes.
Until now.
Okay.
So for the past half year, any news of this movie just disappeared. Even though it was filming had commenced, cast, scripts, cameras ready to go, everything.
Yep.
And then nothing.
Nothing.
And then during the Super Bowl LX1 or whatever letters they're on now, I was sitting there watching, and all of a sudden, I see the Bad Robot logo pop up, and that's when I knew. Because when the Bad Robot logo pops up out of nowhere, it's Cloverfield time. Because I remember 2007.
Oh my god.
2007 Wyeth.
You were
sitting in a darkened theater.
A smooth 20?
Something. Who can keep track of my timeline? I remember young innocent Wyeth sitting in the theater waiting for the first Transformers movies to start because
Jesus.
it was a simpler time. We did not know the horrors that Michael Bay would roll out near annually. And the first trailer for the Cloverfield movie played, and I lost my shit. I'm like, what is this? Is this a Godzilla movie?
Were you alone?
I was alone.
Oh.
I saw the first Transformers movie alone, which is the saddest sentence since Baby Shoes Never Worn.
I'm sorry.
But I went home. I got up on the it was probably dial-up internet back then. I don't know.
No, it wasn't. It was not dial-up internet. Jesus, it was not that long ago.
Well, whatever it was, I went to Ask Jeeves, or probably, and it was like giant monster movie trailer, and like the ye old message boards were going off. What is it? Is it Voltron? Is it Godzilla?
It was Cloverfield.
It was Cloverfield. Fast forward half a year, and in February of 2008, it was released. And it was a great giant monster movie.
Hmm?
And then there was and it was directed by Matt Reeves,
Yep.
now of Monkey fame.
Yep. Scripted by Drew Goddard,
who is a really underrated writer.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember afterwards, like, oh my god, there's going to be a sequel that shows another angle of the monster attack, and I want that. Shut up and take my money.
Yeah, but you didn't get it.
Nothing.
Nothing. Nope.
And I relegated the Cloverfield sequel to the realm of Firefly Season 2 and the Community movie.
Mm.
And then John Goodman grooving along in front of a jukebox. 8 years later.
I think we're alone now.
Yeah. And we got 10 Cloverfield Lane.
We did.
Marketing started a month before it was released, and it was amazing. It's an amazing movie. It's really tense and claustrophobic. No giant monsters, really.
No, only sort of tangentially maybe related to the first one.
Well,
it is
now.
It's supposedly an anthology series in that it's like, I read J.J. Abrams give some kind of like description of it as like, oh, it's like a Cloverfield amusement park where all of the rides are their own specific thing, but there's an overarching like
title,
vibe, or whatever, connecting all of them.
And
which is,
I love that.
in theory, a good idea.
When you are batting 100 with two like low budget but like well done movies, that's a great approach. Don't ruin that approach. And now 2-3 years later from 10 Cloverfield Lane, we got God Particle, or God Cloverfield. Cloverfield God.
The Cloverfield Paradox is the official title now.
It's
released as a surprise release on the very day that they finally showed the first trailer for it. It was available on Netflix within like 3 hours after the first trailer aired.
It aired in the first quarter or the first half of the Super Bowl, and it was available to watch at the end of the Super Bowl.
Yep. And so we watched it, even though it was a school night, and both of us had to get up
We stayed up
for
in
work.
Anticipation.
And
this was a big moment for us.
That was a bad idea.
One of the great posts I see going around about the Cloverfield series is it's getting increasingly shorter and shorter amount of time between announcement and release.
Yeah.
So Cloverfield 4 is just going to be J.J. Abrams chunks a copy of the movie through your front window.
That's good.
So, in In a nutshell. Jesus.
So maybe it's a good time to mention that it's Friday night and we're both pretty drunk.
It's Friday night, and you could call us margaritas because we are
Sure.
full of alcohol and very salty.
Okay. Jesus. Okay. Okay.
But wouldn't you agree?
Wouldn't I agree with what?
With the assessment that we are salty.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also just say that like I remain much more interested in the Cloverfield series as a like weird behind the scenes industrial study than I am anything like that happens during the runtime of the film, and that remains the case.
Yeah.
I am teaching an intro to film class, and I walked in on Monday and was like, "What'd you guys think of the Cloverfield thing?" And all of my students were like, "We didn't care or watch it."
I did the same thing and had the same reaction.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe it's just a domain for those of us that cared about the first one.
Yeah. So, yes, the Cloverfield paradox.
Yes.
In a nutshell, it's terrible.
I feel less harshly about it, I think, than you do.
Mm-hmm.
Than most people do, I think.
Yes.
My general sentiment, and I thought about rewatching it, but we did not. So This is all of these thoughts are based on almost a week old watching of this film. But my general take was that I really enjoyed the first like half of it, 45 minutes to an hour, and then it just goes swiftly downhill.
It free falls.
And by the end of it is just like, yeah, no.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So let's get into the plot before we start hacking away at everything that everything. Just...
Okay. So we start. Do you want to start from the like very beginning?
Yes.
Okay, so we start with our heroine.
Mm-hmm.
Who is, I don't know her first name, but her last name is Hamilton.
So the whole movie I was under my breath.
Okay. Played by Gugu Mbatha-Raw, who is a delight. I mean, the entirety of the cast of this film is
it's a good
vastly
cast.
Overqualified for the material that they are performing.
A good cast that looks like they were put in front of the cameras without time to read their script. And someone is behind the camera holding up bullet points.
I don't think there's an issue with their performances necessarily.
Really?
No, not really.
I found everyone to be very stilted, except for Chris O'Dowd, who was trying his best to be charming. I mean, he is charming.
Okay, well, so Gugu Mbatha-Raw as Hamilton and her husband, Roger Davies.
I mean,
Mr. Hamilton. I don't know his name.
It's a bad sign when characters only have last names.
So yeah, they are sitting in a car and they have some incredibly like poorly written expositional dialogue that lets us know that the Earth is currently in an energy crisis, much like we really, are at the moment. But this is...
Keep in mind, we never learn what year it is.
No, because Cloverfield's original, Cloverfield 1, was pretty much set in the current moment, was it not? Pretty much 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
Right?
They were current.
So, hypothetically, this is a future and or alternate timeline.
Alternate 2000s.
But anyway, we're in an energy crisis, and she is some kind of astronaut
scientist.
Yes. And she has been called into a mission that she is sort of debating about whether or not to go on. They have this very boring conversation in a car. I mean, it's boringly staged because it's really just them in a car.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point is for them to be waiting to get gas and say, wow, what about this energy crisis? Am I right?
Yep.
So yeah, in terms of staging, very boring. In terms of exposition, like a ton is sort of glossed over.
It's a real info dump done with.
So
no
yeah,
flow.
she's deciding whether or not she wants to go up into space. He tells her that she, has to go up into space, and then that's the cut. The next cut is to her having accepted the mission and her being on the space station.
Yes. And they're getting ready to fire up the particle accelerator in space.
The Shepherd.
It is Shepherd. It is, yes, this movie is about a bunch of good-looking people in space.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I like attractive people in space.
Mm-hmm.
I like attractive people in peril in space.
Yes.
Like
That's usually good.
Yeah. So they are up there. The science of this part, I have no idea whether or not this is remotely feasible at all, but they're firing a sort of particle accelerator from space that is going to give the world the energy that it needs forever or something.
Something like, how do they get
I don't know how they get energy from the space
station
station to the Earth, but literally all of Earth is relying on this global space mission. So we have a kind of United Colors of Benetton, United Nations of astronauts up in the space station. We have
Daniel Brühl.
Hamilton from, I assume, England.
Mm-hmm.
Chris O'Dowd from Ireland. We have Daniel Brühl from Germany.
Really lean into that umlaut. We have Eitzel Henne from Russia.
Okay, yeah.
He played a German in The Martian.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds about like the level of care that they took about.
Yeah.
David Oyelowo, who is not American, but he is playing American in this film.
You may recognize him as his career-defining role as the principal in Interstellar.
Sure. Absolutely. That's the only thing you would know him from.
Or MLK Jr. in Selma.
And then who else? Oh, Zhang Ji from China. Is that it? Is that all the crew?
That's all the...
there's a Brazilian guy.
Yeah.
Who goes by Monk. I don't know the actor.
Nah, I don't know either.
Okay. So he's our South American contingent,
I
guess.
John Orvitz.
Okay. So they are all up there trying to fire up this accelerator, which we are
trying their best.
Sort of led to believe is a procedure that has failed multiple times, or
because we get one of the worst montages set to some of the worst canned soundtrack that I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's a sad downgrade. The original Cloverfield score, from Michael Giacchino.
I love Michael Giacchino.
I know.
This movie, so the previous two movies were both shot in 30 million?
I have no idea.
Or less. 30 million or less, and they look fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And they're done so well.
Mm-hmm.
This movie was easily
it was
50 or 60.
Yeah, it was double the budget of Shape of Water, right?
Yes, which was rounded up to 20.
Okay, so at least 40 million.
Yeah. And
which you would think would make sense because pretty much the entirety of the film, almost all of it, is in space.
Space is expensive.
So you would think that it would be, that would be a reasonable budget for the kinds of effects that they would want to do.
Okay, but there are like this movie shows like 3 rooms on that space station: the med bay, the firing chamber, and that one hallway that they just shoot at opposite ends to indicate.
Well, of course
different
they
hallways.
also show the Hamilton's like bunk or whatever it
That
is
is
for.
just the other end of the med bay.
Okay. Okay, so they try to fire the particle accelerator. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. So they got to montage it. Tensions are fraying.
So yeah, I kind of forgot this part. Like, they can't figure out why it's not working, but it is imperative that it does work.
The world is counting
Daniel
on them.
Bruhl and Zhang Ji, they're like kind of implied to be sort of dating or like involved somehow, and they're the sort of technicians.
Crouching Tiger, hidden umlaut.
Yep. Okay. Jesus. So they tinker with it. They fix some stuff. There's some shots of the Russian guy looking shifty because
and very Skarsgård.
Yeah, because
he looks like a long lost Skarsgård brother.
And then I guess the other thing that's happening is that we are intercutting with some scenes of Hamilton's husband, Mr. Hamilton.
Mr. Hamilton.
On Earth. In the aftermath of what I assume is the Cloverfield attack from the first movie.
They weren't in New York, though.
I don't know. I mean, that's the impression I got, right? Like, isn't that the impression? No? Okay.
Because there's a war getting right. There's tension mounting in Europe between like Russia and everyone else, which fair sounds about right, because of like the energy crisis. And so like a bomb goes off, and I think they're in London because of accents, but I can't tell. Like, nothing in this movie has a place. But the weird stuff doesn't start happening until they actually successfully fire up the particle.
Yeah, but isn't it before they fire up the particle accelerator?
There's a bomb that goes off.
Something happens.
Something blows up, and we never learn what it is.
Something blows up. Mr. Hamilton is a nurse or something, works at a hospital, and so we have some sort of weird footage of him like driving into the hospital, and there's kind of a wrecked cityscape that he encounters, right?
No, that's later when he comes home. When he comes home and finds his apartment gone.
Well,
that's later. So they fire up the particle, and it's successful.
Yes, so the particle accelerator, particle cannon, whatever. It is,
the
works.
Particle accelerator,
it works, and it's great. And then like it starts. Well, I guess there's one thing we didn't mention though, which is that at whatever time this is in the future, they're able to get like live cable news broadcasts on the space station.
And so they spend it watching Fox News.
So they're watching
conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, so they're watching some kind of like diet info wars featuring Donald Logue. And he is the author of a book called The Cloverfield Paradox.
And that's when, at that moment, that's when I'm like, uh-oh. Are they trying to, like, over-explain?
So Donald Logue is talking to a talking head on some cable news network about how the experiments that the space station is running risks the possibility of collapsing different dimensions on top of one another and opening all sorts of holes into alternate dimensions and alternate
And we'll
timelines.
usher in the age of monsters and demons.
Right, and so then they tell whoever's watching it, of course, to turn it off so that they can fire up the cannon. The cannon works successfully.
Man, good thing we just randomly checked in on this.
Yep.
On this to give the film foreshadowing.
So they fire the cannon. Cannon works or so we think. The cannon then begins to like overheat or overload or
something.
Something. All the needles on the various dials go into the red.
Yes, that's how we know things are bad.
Yeah, and then some scary like sort of some scary noises go off. And then what?
And then it works.
It works.
And then
it works too much.
It works so well that the Earth is gone.
Yeah, so what happens? Is it sort of like freeze frame or like I don't know. Like
they do it and like, oh, we have to tell Mission Control.
Yeah.
And
so they're trying to get in contact with the ground.
Mm-hmm.
They can't find them. And then they realize they cannot visually locate the Earth.
They all run to...
Yeah, by visually locate, it means they cannot look out a window and find the planet Earth.
They all run to windows, like the same windows, but shot at different times because of set budget.
And the Earth is gone.
It's just out of here.
It's gone. And so initially... some of the members of the crew are like, "Oh shit, we blew up the Earth," which would be an amazing twist.
That's what I was kind of hoping for. And then it's like
we blew up the entire Earth. No, they didn't.
So they figured out that they just like teleported away from the Earth.
Yeah, something like that.
And here's the thing, I think they like teleported on like the other side of the sun.
Okay.
They don't really give directions. They give vague like inklings of like where they are. I think there's like a map that showed where they are in the solar system.
Mm-hmm.
So they begin to move the space station towards the Earth rather than waiting for the Earth to just complete its orbit back to them.
Yeah. This was, a particularly, like, scathing review that I read of the movie was like, why would you not just look for the sun? The sun is the center.
Oh my god, written by Flat Earth people.
So...
we've lost the Earth disk.
Okay. I mean, we're sounding, like, pretty... like, all of this... is like we're harsh in retrospect, but like as we were watching it
was a fun ride.
It was pretty good. Like it unfolded in a very sort of exciting and unpredictable way.
And here's where the movie starts to like have visions of greatness, flashes of greatness. Yeah. And so things start to get weird. Mm-hmm. And the crew starts like becoming more and more paranoid.
Well, that's sort of implying that there's, like, an amount of time that goes by. It's really all kind of, like, immediate.
Yes, again, like everything else, the timeline is indiscernible. What's his face? Axel, the Skarsgård brother, starts to go, like, full Skarsgård. Mm-hmm. In a horrifying scene, he's, like, pushing at his eye in a mirror.
Yeah, so initially that happens when he's with Hamilton and they're checking something. They're checking, like, all the electronics in the space station are fried, so they're all going and checking all the different whatever. And so they're, like, partnered together to fix this one thing, and he's, like, weirdly grabbing at the skin around his eye. And he asks her, he's like, does it look okay? And so initially I was kind of like, oh shit, is this like an alien situation where we have androids on this space station and they just like didn't tell us until later? No. Spoiler alert, no, of course not. But then the sort of first like main exciting like action beat happens when I don't remember who it is that hears it, but there are like sounds coming from within the walls of the space station.
Like someone is screaming.
Yeah, and so they all gather in this hallway, this multi-purpose hallway.
The one hallway.
And they, decide to take the panel off the wall some people don't want them to, but...
Let's just leave the screaming in place.
So they take the panel out of the wall and they find a person.
This woman.
Inside the wall of the spaceship.
Who has been kind of like fused into the machinery.
Yeah, there are cables and wires running through her body, and she is like fused into the mechanization of the space station. So they...
Which that scene was very effective.
Yeah, that was great. I really liked it.
It was horrifying.
Yeah.
We were both low-key screaming.
Yeah. They cut her free, take her to the med bay. It's Elizabeth Debicki from, I know her from The Great Gatsby. I don't know what you know her from.
I don't know. I this is my first introduction.
Oh, she's from Guardians 2. She's the gold lady from Guardians 2.
Okay.
So she has a kind of space otherworldly air.
This movie has so many ties to better space movies. Just follow the threads and watch all of those.
So she is in the med bay. While she's like in the wall before they've cut her free, she recognizes Gugu's character.
Yeah.
Calls her by name, and so then Hamilton, when she is like in the med bay recuperating, Hamilton goes in to talk to her and basically be like, "What the fuck? Who are you? How did you get inside the walls of our ship, and how do you know who I am?" Okay, and then she says, "We're on this mission together. Mm-hmm. I'm the person in charge of tech maintenance of the particle accelerator or whatever." Hamilton says, "No, that's Zhang Ji's job." So then we start getting this sort of indication that there's two different, at least two different realities that we're working with.
So, the Skarsgård light. Mm-hmm. So, he starts poking at his eye, and he goes off alone, and he starts poking at his eye, and his left eye just separates.
Like crosses itself.
Like it looks like he's looking forward, and the left eye looks to his left.
Mm-hmm. Just all on its own.
Yep, which Bill Skarsgård can actually do, and it's terrifying. For those of you who have seen it, you know of what we speak. So he goes fully unhinged at this point, and 3D prints a gun.
Yes. So
Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, the 3D printed gun and bullets.
Because that's a thing that should be allowed to be constructed on a space station.
Yeah.
Like, if they have enough advanced equipment to smash particles together, their technology should recognize, like, fucking Clippy should pop up and be like, "I see you're trying to make a gun. You can't do that." Also, this movie is full of characters who are supposed to be scientists, and at no point did they ever have a rational conversation about anything.
So I guess at this point, sooner or later by now, we've had another cut back down to Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Hamilton is in the wreckage of the flaming city, whatever it is.
Yeah. Like,
he's gone to where he thinks the hospital that he works at should be. There's nothing there. There's just wreckage. He finds...
Well, something big moves past the building.
Mm-hmm.
Something monstrous. Oh, I wonder what it could be.
He finds an abandoned girl, a child.
Yes, and no other sign of humans.
Yes. So he, Molly,
because
I think her name is. Yeah.
Some little girl who serves no purpose.
Yeah, Molly, she gets in the car with him. She doesn't know where her parents are. They decide to drive to...
His friends.
He texts some friend of his as having a shelter,
Mhm.
which is the sort of tie-in to 10 Cloverfield Lane.
I expected that it was actually going to be John Goodman's shelter.
That'd be...
That would have been wild. But no, it is the most nondescript.
Yeah, no, it's
just
nobody in particular.
A man takes a 9-year-old girl to a fallout shelter and they hang out there.
Yep, pretty much.
Which is...
He is also like in contact with a NASA person, NASA director.
Because his wife is...
Yeah, and says, have you heard from my wife? And the NASA guy says, funny story. We don't know where they are. They're lost.
They're gone. Lost in space.
Etc. So yeah, there's at least a couple cuts down to like this...
him pacing and like angrily like pounding on table.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's an entirely pointless subplot at the end of the day.
Yes.
Like, at the very end, they try and pay it off, but it's bullshit.
Yeah. So, back up in Lost in Space.
Yep. Back up in the alternate dimension. Oh, I guess the other thing, I don't know when this happens, but they have a close-up of a photograph of, like, the team, and all the members are the same, except it's Elizabeth Debicki's character instead of Zhang Ji's.
Yeah.
So, that's our other kind of clue, I guess.
That everything is shifting.
Mm-hmm.
So, she hangs... What's her name?
Hamilton?
No, Jensen. The wall girl.
Yes.
Perks of being a wall girl.
Okay.
She spends 97% of the movie in
the
med bay.
Yeah.
And no one discusses why she's there or anything.
Nope.
So while that's going on, everyone else is still trying to
fix the ship.
Mm-hmm. Chris O'Dowd, who I've always really loved as an actor because the IT Crowd is one of the best comedies of all time. So he's working on a wall.
Is this
before?
No.
Oh, no.
This is after.
This is after.
Yeah.
So for some reason, Chris O'Dowd is also in charge of a big aquarium of worms.
Yeah, so they've gotten some kind of worm experiment in space. Why? Who the fuck cares? Don't think about it. Basically. Like...
Pretty much. So he finds...
Why are there worms in space? Because fuck you, that's why.
Yes. So he walks, he's kind of like whistling past the worm cage, and he's like, nope, gotta go back, because all the worms are gone.
All the worms are gone. Where did the worms go? And so, like, I would say at this point in watching it for the first time, you and I were both still
engaged.
On board.
Like, the space horror is going.
Because basically, I mean, this sort of, like, thing is like, okay, we're starting to get that these are two alternate timelines, alternate realities, whatever, that have phased into one another and are thus, like, incompatible. And so that's how you get shit like... Oh, hey, my reality has, like, transformed me into, now that I'm, like, embedded in the fucking, like, guts of a ship.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So, like, my initial reaction was like, oh, this is giving me a whole new range of shit to be afraid of that I would never have, like, thought to be afraid of in the first place. I would never think to have the kind of, like,
fears of being
existential horror of, like, what if I phase into something else?
I actually worry about that a lot.
Okay. So the sort of second round of this is our Russian...
Volkov.
Yep, our Russian guy has...
Snapped,
and then what did he...
He's waving around a gun.
Mm-hmm. How does he actually die, though?
Oh, he just... It's like a bad scene from like Prometheus or something. He just convulses.
Okay.
Like, he waves the gun around, starts to have convulsions, and then dies.
He just dies.
And so they rush him onto the into the med bay at table number 2, and
cut him open.
No.
No.
He convulses some more, and vomits worms everywhere,
Oh, okay.
which is disgusting,
Yeah.
but made no sense.
Well, I mean, like, I guess the good thing about having a script where you're literally just merging one reality on top of another is just like, hey, who knows? Maybe worms phase into the inside of you and you don't notice for a couple hours.
But like, well, just a slight spoiler before we get to it. But like, so many things phase into this man.
Yeah, it is weird that like there's a lot of shit inside that guy.
He's like a human version of Hermione's endless pouch.
So all the worms have wound up inside of him.
He spews them out in a really gross scene.
Yep.
It's gross, makes no sense.
Yep, he dies. And then everybody continues working on the ship, and then Chris O'Dowd's
working on the wall, and his arm gets sucked into the wall, quicksand, and it proceeds to move around in the same style as in like Looney Tunes, where if someone were to draw a hole, it would be an actual hole, and then they can just move it around.
Yeah.
And so it eventually like cuts off his arm, and it doesn't bleed or anything. It's just a clean cut.
He feels no pain, but he is without the arm.
Sans on.
So yeah, they take him to the med bay. The Brazilian doctor guy is like,
it's as if you had never had it.
Yeah, it's there's a clean slice. There's no blood. There's no pain. There's no nothing.
So before this, Daniel Bruhl was imprisoned in the one hallway's like airlock that leads to nowhere. And because the captain, David Oyelowo, discovered that
Keel, his name is, I think.
Keel, yeah, because he discovers that Bruhl is a spy or has been sending.
Well, he was a spy in the universe, supposedly, of Elizabeth.
It turns out that Alt Bruhl is a spy working to sabotage the station.
Right, and this is like initially tagged by Jensen, Elizabeth Debicki's character. She tells Hamilton not to trust him.
Yeah.
And then Keel, David Oyelowo, finds encoded, messages or whatever that he's supposedly been sabotaging the station. So he puts Daniel Bruhl in prison, airlock, isolation.
Which is not very effective because, like, minutes later, the airlock opens back into the station for a mysterious reason, and Bruhl finds Chris O'Dowd's arm, like, Evil Dead 2 style, creeping along.
So, yeah, Chris O'Dowd's arm is crawling.
Yeah.
Crawling down the hall.
Just chilling.
They imprison it momentarily in a box.
And it's... This is a really great, like, funny moment of body horror because the arm, like, starts to write, and Chris O'Dowd's like, someone give my arm a pen.
Yep. So the arm is trying to write something. They give Chris O'Dowd's arms a piece of paper and a marker. He writes that...
Cut open Volkov.
Yep.
Because the reason they can't, like, orient the station is because the gyroscope. Because they don't have spares for such an important and replaceable part.
The one part that allows them to navigate everything in the station.
Rather than a map or anything. The gyroscope has disappeared.
It's disappeared, and then Chris O'Dowd's arm tells us that it's actually phased inside of Volkov's body, next to all the worms.
Did his arm hang out, spend the summer abroad in the large intestine?
I'm wondering, because his the arm that writes that message can't be his original arm, right? Because The arm that's his from the dimension that he comes from would have no way of knowing that, right?
I don't know.
So this is like an alternate dimension arm.
An alt arm.
This is an arm from another dimension that somehow knows what is
I
inside.
think that it got phased into Volkov. Because, like, that's where everything is going nowadays, apparently.
Wait, you think the arm did?
I think the arm.
I don't think so.
I think so.
I mean, I think it's what
like,
I think
it
is.
got phased in.
I think it's bad writing. Period.
Yes.
That's the end.
I think it got phased in
No.
as he was like making its way south to get out, or however.
Ugh, gross.
It passed the gyroscope. It's like, oh hey, that's where that is, and then continued its journey. And
No,
that arm has seen some things.
I think that it's a bullshit plot hole that they didn't consider.
This is the point where they cut open Volkov even more, and they pull out the gyroscope. Surprisingly clean.
There it is. Yep.
And at this point, I'm starting to be like, BS. This is some BS. So they're still They find out they're on the other side of the sun, and they're like, we will fly the station.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like the order of how things happen. So.
Well, they find out that they plugged in the gyroscope, which also was keeping them from communicating with Earth.
It's like their power source or something. So of course they would only have one of it.
Gyrospopes don't do that.
I know.
So they plug it in and they communicate with Earth, only to find out that the station had crashed to Earth 2 days before.
Yes. So yeah, they're supposedly.
So they make contact and then never talk about it again.
Yeah, they never discuss the fact that their alternate universe selves are dead or something.
No one calmly and rationally, like scientists would, discusses the ramifications. Like,
yeah. I guess the other sort of important like character beat that occurs at this point-ish is that Jensen takes Hamilton aside and tells her that in Hamilton's reality, her children...
Hamilton Prime.
Yes, her children have died in a fire.
Yes.
Because she had a sort of contraband energy cell or something in their house, and it malfunctioned and caught fire, and her 2 children died.
Yeah.
In the alternate reality that they have merged with, her children are alive. So
this is where the movie, because this is like the halfway point of the movie.
Pretty much, yeah.
This is where things like slow to a halt. Like nothing interesting happens from here on in.
Yeah, pretty much. So she takes Keel aside for a moment and says basically like, hey, I will help you do everything you need to do to get back to the real Earth, but FYI, I'm staying on this Earth with my kids.
Yeah.
Even though people rightly point out, it's like, wait a minute, another you is alive and down there with the kids that are actually her kids.
And she, as a rational scientist, is like, no, it's fine.
Yep. She doesn't care about any of that.
The one girl died in the airlock.
Yeah. Zhang Ji gets flash frozen.
Because an airlock suddenly fills up with water?
Fills with water, and then there's a crack, and like the coldness of space immediately freezes it. It's some bullshit. She's totally wasted.
Why did that airlock fill with water?
Well, I don't know.
They made some comment like, "Oh, we discovered that water had been."
Yeah, she was the one who discovered that the reason that the like particle accelerator was failing was because of like condensation,
which is
fair.
Yeah.
I don't know why that leads to the place where she goes filling with water immediately. All the condensation from all the times just immediately fills that chamber with water in like 10 seconds flat.
All because she was moving a tarp?
I don't know, man. But anyway, yeah, she gets drowned slash the
Drowned, flash frozen.
slash a crack occurs enough to let in the coldness of space and the entire cavity freezes. I mean, it's a total waste of her. She's an amazing actress, and it was just an insult to her.
This is a science anger moment. So the door cracked because the pressure of the water. However, the pressure of the oxygen, wouldn't that have been like almost the same?
I don't know, man. I leave the science bitching up to you.
That's what, yes, the science. Like, there's fun science which plays fast and loose with science, sci-fi that plays fast and loose with science.
Mm-hmm.
Something like, I don't know, like Firefly. Like, the science just gets glossed over, and the whole story isn't affected. And then there's stuff that's more like hard science fiction, like Interstellar or The Martian, and it's really integral. And this movie is like, hey, we have some actual grounded science things, like the whole God particle. That's actually a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they proceed to like cut the legs out of the science in the movie, and it really took me out of it.
Yeah. So then what happens? She dies.
So Hamilton's like, Hamilton's determined to go back with Jensen.
Yes, so they're gonna take an escape pod because they've determined that the only way for the original crew of people to get back to their version of Earth, their version of reality, whatever,
is to restart.
Is to fire the whole particle cannon again and reload and overload it again so that it'll take them back. I don't know if that's at all feasible. I doubt it.
I feel like if you tear...
Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again?
If only
the particle accelerator.
If only Chris O'Dowd of the IT department had told them. But no, their approach to this whole situation is like, okay, I ripped my shirt. I think to fix the hole in my shirt, I need to rip it again. Therefore, creating a bigger hole, which is not what I want. But I'm going to do it anyway.
So yeah, she's decided, just against all like logic and really emotionally like based character beats, because what never gets addressed is that she would be leaving her husband behind on Earth. She apparently doesn't care about that. No.
They're still repairing the ship.
Chris O'Dowd goes. There's some bullshit about like, oh, we're gonna have to fill the hallway with
oxygen.
And it's gonna be incredibly flammable. So
Chris O'Dowd dies by like magnetic sand strangulation.
Yeah. So he has been shown using this like magical, that seems fairly plausible to me. Yeah. Like some sort of magnetic or sort of liquid metal that then is able to harden and repair joints and stuff in various electronics and like that. So he's been using that. All of a sudden, at one end of the hall, it becomes incredibly magnetized, and we see that because just different shit is getting attracted to it. Pieces of like his stuff off his utility belt and whatever is flying, and then the metallic sand starts
to form like tendrils toward him. And if things are flying at a wall because it's magnetized, you need to look back.
Well, yeah, but
But the metal sand reaches out and pulls
it
back.
It appears to be like have sentient. A mind of its own for a second. Like it's not moving in the direction of where everything has been shown to be
Mm-hmm.
magnetized. It's just doing its own shit.
Yeah, like they briefly show that in the trailer. I saw like tentacles, and I'm like, oh my god, there's gonna be like tentacle monsters. Sign me up. Nope, it's metal sand.
Yep, metal sand that is suddenly...
Ignoring the laws of everything.
Right. So he dies via metallic sand, but also there's an explosion.
Yeah, he gets pinned back to the wall, and he gets pinned at the opposite end of the magnets, and a oxygen canister flies at the other end, and a spark and blah blah, it explodes.
Which, like, you'd think that they would have taken that canister out of that hallway if they knew that it was going to be...
It's almost as if the inherent logic of Cloverfield paradox is flawed.
I feel like you have... I know that you've been using that line a lot on your podcast.
I haven't used it since, like, the beginning, but okay.
I don't think so. I feel like I've heard you mention it a lot, and I feel like you're not giving Nick Kroll the credit that he deserves, because that is a Nick Kroll original.
Okay. Nick Kroll 2017 APA style. There we go.
Yep. Kroll 2017. Yes, it's almost as if the inherent logic of Time Cop is flawed.
Time Cop probably makes more sense than this movie.
Probably.
You watched Time Cop.
I know. I don't remember it that well. I don't remember this movie that well.
So the explosion throws off one of the spinning discs that's on the outside.
Yeah, I read a description of the space station as basically looking kind of like a weed eater, and it's hard to...
It's like, if someone were to take, it's like a spinning plate on a stick, and you stick arms on that stick and spin more plates on those arms.
Yeah, a lot of just discs on a big...
It's the most nondescript space station.
Yeah, but it's a lot of
rotational
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so it blows up. Brule and Hamilton and...
It's Monk, actually.
Okay,
Monk, Hamilton, and Keel. David Oyelowo.
They walk from point A to point B on a spacewalk.
They get in there.
And they turn around, and David Oyelowo sacrifices himself.
Yep, they have to figure out, they either have to repair it or detach the, like, damaged part of the spaceship. They spend an incredibly long amount of time in their spacesuits doing these, like, tortured spacewalks from one thing to another. Then once they get there, David Oyelowo realizes that it's not fixable. He seals himself inside the, the broken wing or whatever it is, and
jettisons it or something.
Yeah, they leave him behind, and it's jettisoned.
The most unimpactful sacrifice in any space movie.
Yeah, and again, like, he's a great actor.
Yeah.
He just was not given the material for anybody to have formed any emotional attachment to him whatsoever, even though he is, like, the leader of this mission. We see him making leaderly pronouncements here and there, but there's no, like, emotional stakes to that whatsoever.
Like, I think, pacing-wise, this movie is a disaster. There is no time... Well, the script, it's hindered by the script, which gives no sense of urgency or empathy to these characters. But that can be overcome by good actors, which these people are. However, the script doesn't give them time to have their characters fleshed out.
Yeah. So at this point, we are down to
4.
Monk, Jensen, Hamilton, and Daniel Brühl,
Schmidt.
Whatever.
The most nondescript German name.
The German is the most German name.
And at this point.
So at this point, Hamilton and Jensen are
Mhm.
supposedly going to get in a pod and leave
Yes.
for the alternate Earth, and the other
Alt-Earth.
two are going to go back to the original Earth. However, turns out that Jensen is a saboteur.
No.
Yeah?
No, her mind is broken from having, this is my theory.
Okay.
I don't think she's a saboteur because in her reality, Schmidt was a saboteur.
Mhm.
So she believes that Schmidt is still a saboteur in Prime Timeline, but he's not.
I don't think so.
What?
Like, I don't think that her actions at that point have anything to do with Schmidt. Because her whole, like, driving thing is that she wants to, like, in her reality, they were never able to get the particle cannon to work right. So, she is acting on behalf of her entire Earth, basically, her planet, her reality. And so, she knocks out Hamilton in the pod.
Yeah.
Kills Monk, Brazilian guy, and then is on her way to kill Schmidt. But I don't think it's because she thinks that he's a saboteur or whatever. I think she's just acting out of interest for her planet.
Well, both of these could be true because the movie does such a bad job.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, really.
So anyway, Hamilton.
But Hamilton, of course, like
prevails.
wakes up like 30 seconds after she, even less than that, like 10 seconds after she tries to knock her out.
Which, I mean, you don't actually get knocked out if you get hit in the head with like a gun.
Really?
Yeah, like
I've never been hit in the head with a
neither
gun,
have I.
so I don't know.
But I've read that is one of Hollywood myths that if you get hit in the back of the head by a gun, you're knocked out. That's not how that works.
I don't know, but even by Hollywood standards, it's quite a short amount of time that goes by.
Enough time to like, so that there's like 3 seconds left on.
Yeah, whatever, on the massive countdown.
So yeah, so Hamilton defeats her, like shoots a window, and
yeah, they're fighting in the sort of main
med bay.
Is it?
It may as well be.
I don't know. Yeah, shoots out a window and Elizabeth Debicki gets sucked out.
Yes, the room doesn't violently decompress, which should have happened the moment she shot that window.
Yeah, and then I guess the sort of important character moment is that, you know, by leaving the escape pod, Hamilton has decided to, you know, forego the chance to see her alternate reality kids and, in fact, save the planet, etc.
So Hamilton and Schmidt fire up the reactor particle thing, and it works, and they're back in their timeline, and it's stable. There's clean energy.
Yep, it works. Everything's great. Schmidt should have been dead because he got shot at least twice.
Yeah. So yeah, there's now energy for Earth.
Yep, energy forever. Yay!
And so the canned music is swelling, and they're like getting ready to get into the capsule to go down to Earth. NASA gets in contact with Mr. Hamilton, and
their pod's out.
Yeah, the pod's streaking to Earth. It's like the finale of Gravity.
Yep.
And Mr. Hamilton, with just a deadpan delivery, is like, she can't come back. She can't come back.
You're bringing her back here with all these things.
Cut to the pod streaking through the clouds. It disappears into the clouds. When suddenly, the Cloverfield monster bursts through the clouds and roars, and cue credits.
Yeah, I've read that it's not the same monster.
Right.
But it looked like the same monster generally to
me. Same species.
I thought it was the same. I mean, if not the exact same monster, then definitely same type.
Well, because the first movie, because after the movie, I think it was Matt Reeves was like, yeah, that's just a baby.
Yeah, that's
And I'm
Clover's
like-
a baby.
And I'm just like, oh my god, there's a whole species of
Yeah.
giant monsters at the bottom of the ocean. That's such a cool concept.
So it's a a mama or a daddy.
Yeah.
Cloverfield maybe
Something.
or something like that.
So
So yeah.
So this
Did
is...
you think that, like, initially I thought that the pod, like the monster coming up out of the clouds, meant that like the pod had gotten just like swallowed by by that monster?
No.
No? Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, I'm still angry, but it makes me less angry.
Yeah.
That it didn't just literally get swallowed before even hitting the earth.
Oh my god. So this movie, what I liked about the first Cloverfield and the second Cloverfield is that there wasn't like a thing shoehorned into them. Like they were both standalone movies and they were done well. This movie felt like someone along the assembly line got it in their mind like, oh, we have to explain why there's weird things in these other movies. And I'm like, you don't have to explain.
Yeah,
Like, because JJ's all about, like, the mystery. And I'm okay with that. I like mystery done well. Like, you don't have to shine a light on everything. And this feels very uncharacteristically, unnecessarily explanatory for JJ. Like,
Well-
his go-to thing. It feels like someone took his keys away. And,
well, he's not in charge of. I mean, he's the producer, but like.
it still feels like someone took away his kind of oversight and took his keys away and drove this car into a tree.
See, I feel like it's the opposite. Like, because this was originally going to be its own movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then it feels like in theory, the whole idea of an anthology series is great because it's like, okay, here are some like original sci-fi ideas that might not get the audience, on their own merit.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll slap a fucking Cloverfield label on it and people will go and see it because they want to see how it like connects to the mythos of the overarching thing or whatever. And like as a marketing gimmick, I think that's fascinating and I think it's great. But like I think that for 10 Cloverfield Lane, like I never was like, "Oh, how does this tie into the original Cloverfield? Like are the monsters at the end of 10 Cloverfield Lane like related to the monsters of Clover?" Like it doesn't it doesn't matter. It's just an overall like tone or whatever, and this seems like they took what is, I mean, already like a pretty shoddy sci-fi script, but like fun enough at the first half of it, of just the stuff in space, and they added in all the crap about the husband on Earth dealing with whatever, and then particularly the like ending shot where they're like, okay, now we need to like directly tie it into all this like mythos and whatever. And so like the sort of that like move seems like it was a like just a total bastardization of what it should originally be, which is like, hey, just all this shit is in the Cloverfield universe. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's all related. Maybe,
well, I mean, even if they had, like, the problem isn't that they shoehorned in connections to the other movies. The main thing is that it does everything so poorly. Like, this movie feels like someone... Well, it took two movies I really love. Sunshine, which is one of my favorite science fiction movies. It's a little seen Danny Boyle movie about a journey to the sun. And it's like exactly like Cloverfield Paradox. It's about a group of people, a group of scientists and astronauts on a space station moving through space. But the movie takes its time to build up tension. And I think everyone should see Sunshine because it's, well acted, well directed. It has a very memorable score. but it's a serious movie, and at times Cloverfield Paradox felt like it wanted to be taken seriously, but
Yeah.
then it veered so heavily into camp, which
Yeah.
reminded me of a different movie, Event Horizon, which is another which is a real lost '90s gem, in which Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, and Jason Isaacs
Mhm.
get on board a spaceship that had been to actual hell and back. It's Hellraiser in space, and there's lots of like horrific moments that reminded me a lot of Cloverfield Paradox, like the scene where he vomits worms, or where the arm is crawling down the
Mhm.
deck.
Yeah.
But it's campy. It's a fun movie, and Cloverfield Paradox never settles on a tone.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, I think, yeah, Chris O'Dowd was in a totally different movie than
He
pretty
was
much everybody else.
he was the only person who managed to hit some level of emotion in his acting.
Well, he was funny.
Yes,
Yeah.
but when he lost his arm, he seemed to actually be like, holy fuck, I just
So yeah,
lost.
there was like the funny, like dark humor of the
Mhm.
Chris O'Dowd arm thing. And then there's like the, deeper sort of dramatic emotion of, you know, Hamilton and her dead
I could
kids
not
and
get into
whatever.
her. I could not get behind any emotions she was slaying
Yeah,
down.
and and like even Jensen, the like stowaway from the alternate universe or
Yeah.
whatever. Like again, it's not an issue with performances because I think Elizabeth Debicki is really good.
Hmm.
I think all of the people are really good. They're too good.
Yeah, like
Chris O'Dowd at least was like, here I am. I'm gonna like
I'm going to have some fun.
yeah, like I'm gonna read these lines in a funny
Mhm.
way, basically.
Like,
Everybody else was like just given a totally different movie to be in, and
it didn't match. It doesn't match at all the tone set by the two previous movies, which are very much genre movies, but they're serious.
mhm.
Like the first Cloverfield is very depressing, actually,
Yeah,
and then 10 Cloverfield Lane is very grounded in characters. Like even when spoilers, even when aliens show up in that, you Mary Elizabeth Winstead does such a great job of grounding everything and the script and the setting.
yeah, and particularly 10 Cloverfield Lane is like the majority of that story is grounded in like not even really sci-fi like concerns.
Yeah,
There are, issues of like obviously like gender relations, misogyny,
yeah,
all that kind of just sort of societal violence against women before the whole alien thing even comes in. And in our last episode, I believe I was on record as being like relatively anti the aliens at the end.
it's a very divisive.
I was more engaged by the just like thriller of human relations and less impacted by the turning up of actual aliens at the
Listen,
end.
it's like a good cake. There's the act. Listen, it's there's the meat of the cake. You know,
What? Cake doesn't have meat in it.
you've never had a meat cake? No, like the stuff you bake. You bake the cake. That's
Batter?
the filling, the batter. That's the whole time in the shelter. The aliens are just
Are you
icing.
thinking of pie? Pie has filling.
It's a savory thing where the aliens are just the delightful topping.
Okay.
They're just bonus, a good, tasty bonus.
Okay.
I mean, because the first movie set precedents for genre. Like this movie is a genre movie. So there had to be like that special weirdness to it. And I think without the aliens, it would have been like she's like what Kimmy Schmidt, the serious movie.
No, I don't think so. I think it would have been just as successful as a film. But I know we had a whole episode
Yes.
on this, so we don't have to go over it
Going
again.
going back
but-
to God Paradox, like audiences can suspend disbelief if a movie's done well. Like
Sure.
Interstellar.
Yeah.
The whole black hole.
Anything. Star Wars. Like,
Well, yeah,
whatever.
Star Wars. But like, I'm going to use Interstellar. Like the whole black hole like scene at the end. I don't like it, but the whole rest of the movie is so well done. Like I can like get through bad parts or parts that don't make a lot of sense or that aren't really great at supporting the narrative that you've laid down. However, nothing in God Particle.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole, I mean, I think that in order to like refashion this movie into a success,
Mm-hmm.
you would need to cut out the entirety of the stuff on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It serves no purpose other than to be like, ooh, look, they're going to a shelter. Could it be the same shelter? Oh, it's not. Never mind.
Or at least do it better. Because
I mean, whatever.
this movie desperately needed an ability to place things in context of like scale. Like what year is it?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah, I think it'd be better if it was all in space. Lose all the Earth stuff, including the shitty scene at the very beginning.
See, when the news first came out that was going to be about a particle accelerator, I imagined it was going to take place in like an underground facility,
Mm-hmm.
which that would be really interesting. Because I mean, we've already had. If you can't do space well, don't do it. That's my Wyeth 2 cents. But like, I would have loved to have seen the ending of keep the monsters, but the survivors emerge from like the bunker, and there's more monsters.
So you would get rid of the space
Even
thing entirely and just have them be in the underground
Yeah,
facility?
even though it's kind of the same ending as the second movie, I would have rather, or it would really mirror the same plot as the second movie. But I don't know. I don't like to see space done poorly. It feels like you loan your car to someone and they wreck it. That's what I'm very possessive of space.
All of space.
All of space.
Okay.
All of it. I want to see proper representation of space.
Sure.
Oh my god.
But like, are you still gonna go see Cloverfield 4?
I was talking to a friend about it, because it's wrapping up production apparently.
Yeah, it's supposed to be out by the end of the year.
It's apparently it's going to be back in theaters.
Yeah, supposedly.
We'll see how this treats that.
We'll see. I mean,
It's supposed to take place during World War II, and hear me out. Giant monsters fighting Nazis. No. That's the wrong reaction. Because that premise has me waiting in line already. Someone on the internet played the first Cloverfield movie and Cloverfield Paradox, started them at the same time, and noticed at the scene where they fire up the particle accelerator and everything goes wrong, that's when the first rumbling is experienced in the original Cloverfield.
Okay.
And I don't know. No one knows if that was intentional.
I doubt it. I mean, they're both about an hour and 40 minutes, right?
18 minutes.
Which one?
Oh, you meant overall length.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're both about equitable length, and that's about the time that you would have your first sort of like action beat. So I don't know how.
So you're saying a more clever movie would...
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that seems like the sort of shit that like J.J. Abrams or whoever would find later and be like, "Oh yeah, we totally meant to do that." And it's like bullshit. You did not. I don't believe you.
That's cynical.
Yeah, it is. I don't trust him.
What? Why don't you believe in JJ?
Because we just did a whole fucking episode about why I don't believe in him anymore.
It wasn't his fault. I don't think this was JJ's fault.
Whatever. I blame him.
What has he done wrong to like instill such hostility besides this movie?
Besides this movie, I don't know. I mean, I think this movie's enough.
I don't think. Here's the thing. I think he didn't have.
You're more of a JJ fan than I am, I will say.
Like, I really enjoyed his movies and his like stuff that he like his stamp of approval. Mm-hmm. And so
I just feel like he has a tendency to be like, "You're never gonna guess what I'm gonna do," and then people are like, "We probably will, though." So he's like, "Oh, Super 8, you'll never know what it's gonna be," and people are like, "Is it an alien?" And he's like, "No, it fucking is." And it's like, and he's like, "You're never gonna guess who's gonna be in the next Star Trek movie," and people are like, "Is it Khan?"
Okay, that was a...
Yeah. And he's like, "No, it's not. It's somebody else. It's John, what's his name?" It's like... You know, it's like, not everything has to be a big guessing game. Just be like, it's okay to be open about some shit sometimes. Like...
Well, in that case, wouldn't he have played a bigger guessing game if he had a bigger role in this new one?
I don't know. Or like, when people were, he's like, "You're not gonna guess what's going on Lost." And you're like, "Are they in purgatory?" And he's like, "No."
And they weren't.
But they kind of were.
They were, but not on the island.
Listen, I'm not getting into it. I'm not getting into Lost with you. I don't want to end our relationship on a podcast.
Lost has a perfect ending. It doesn't always have perfect episodes, but it has one of the best casts and best lineup of characters that we have ever been graced with.
Great cast, flawed narrative. Much like Cloverfield Paradox.
Holy fuck. What? No. Don't touch me. No. No. You are dead to me. How dare you, Anna Louise Wittgenstein?
Don't say my last name on this shit.
I'll bleep it out. Something like stupid. I'm so salty now. I am no alcohol and all salt. Lost is perfect. Well, do you have anything else to say about this debacle?
Well, just again that I like find the whole. I think if Paramount Pictures ends up like totally collapsing into nothingness, it'll be an interesting like phase in its downfall.
Paramount has played a lot of risks.
Yeah.
Mother.
Well, yeah, it betted real hard on stuff like Baywatch and came up real short.
Even with The Rock.
Which is, why I mean, at the end of the day, it was a good deal for Paramount that Netflix was willing to buy this for them for apparently $50 million, which is probably more than it would ever make in the theater. Yeah. So, good for them, I guess.
Netflix just bought another sci-fi movie that Universal had shelved, called Extinction, with Michael Pena and Lizzie Kaplan from the first Cloverfield.
Yeah.
It's about aliens. But I will say, I'm very excited to see Michael Pena as the leading role. He deserves leading role.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm a little like nervous to think about the future of all these sci-fi movies as like only being feasible on direct streaming services like this, because definitely not the case for Cloverfield Paradox, but in general, like well done sci-fi movies tend to benefit so much from being on big screen formats with, good surround sound and stuff like that.
Like I would have liked to have seen Okja in
Yeah.
theaters.
So, I mean, that's like just part of a really larger conversation about streaming services and Netflix and whatever, but
there's been rumors that Alex Garland's upcoming Annihilation would be dumped straight to streaming. Last I checked, it's still coming to theaters, and I'm very excited to see that since it's supposed to be as good as Ex Machina.
Yeah, I mean, I think Netflix is already kind of a sort of notable place where a lot of horror films debut, smaller horror films. But I would be sad to think that like all genre films outside of Marvel and DC are going to be like dumped on streaming because they're no longer seen as feasible to a mass audience at the box office. But
yeah, well, like over the past decades, science fiction has seen, because science fiction is usually so costly, and unless it has the clout of like Star Wars or Star Trek, it's hard to bring in a good return. So that's why we see less and less sci-fi tentpoles.
yeah.
That's why like Interstellar and The Martian and Gravity were all so important to me, because it was like three hard sci-fi movies that did well. But they all had clout behind them.
Yeah. As regards Cloverfield Paradox, I have nothing really else to say. Just it's good until it's real bad. Like,
and even the good is iffy.
Yeah, it's like mindlessly good. It's like entertaining good, and then it's just it's real.
So
bad.
if you want to, go watch Event Horizon and Sunshine, which are the two tones that it plays with and does neither well.
Yep, pretty much.
Well, do you have any personal picks?
What
media have you been consuming lately?
Well, I don't know. Can you go first? Do you have something?
I do. It's something that you can participate in discussion.
Okay, you go first, and I'll see if I can think of something.
This section might as well just be it's a very important PSA, in that if you are not watching The Good Place, what are you doing with your life? Like, it is the most consistently surprising and heartwarming show since Parks and Rec.
Yeah. Both Michael Schur projects. It just had its season 2 finale. So I assume, I don't know what their Netflix deal is, but
the first season's on Netflix.
Within a few months, I don't know if it's like 6 months or something.
Something like that.
But yeah, the whole second season should probably be added to
Netflix. It's on Hulu now, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's such a good show. Ted Danson is a national treasure, and we should protect him at all costs. I was never really a fan of Kristen Bell, yeah, until this. The only things I known her for were Forgetting Sarah Marshall and Frozen. And she doesn't play a good person in Sarah Marshall, which is a great movie.
Yeah, I've never seen Veronica Mars. I know a lot of people are big fans. Oh,
that's right. I've heard good things.
Big fans of her from that. Yeah, I'll say she's not like my favorite character on The Good Place, but I think that she's a good anchor, you know, for the show. Yeah, I mean, obviously the MVP is Janet.
Yes. so good. So it's a show that's very hard to spoil because it's so twist and turny. But it follows a group of people who have all. Well, season one opens on a group of people who have died and they've gone to the good place.
Yeah, it's basically all about the afterlife.
Yes.
So the good place, the bad place, the medium place, and
Oof.
everything in between.
And everything in between includes everything from Jason Mantzoukas to frozen yogurts and everything.
Yep, frozen yogurt. A thing that you would get if heaven was not quite was not quite perfect.
So please watch it. Since it's on NBC, I'm afraid for it because of the community effect. It feels like it doesn't have the same level of audience as like Parks or definitely not The Office.
No.
Like Parks, I felt like really got lucky in that it got to end on its terms.
I feel like The Good Place might not. I don't know anything about its ratings.
I know it's critically.
But yeah, I think that they would hopefully be willing enough to let Michael Schur and the writing staff of the show, is like the best reviewed sitcom right now, I would say, pretty much hands down. Like, particularly on network, absolutely.
Yes. So everyone watching This Is Us should actually watch a show that truly deserves all the awards. God, I hate that ad. This Is Us deserves all the awards from Twitter Mom 2132.
I don't know what else to say about The Good Place. Just that
it's hard to talk about the plot because it's crazy.
It's great. Some of the the four sort of like main human characters are very fallible and thus relatable.
Yes.
Like they all have various like flaws, whether it's like being, selfish or being too overly concerned with other people's opinions,
neurotic,
or being like overly anxious so that you can't make any decisions,
or just being from Florida.
Yeah, being from Florida man. Also, my other sort of recommendation after you watch The Good Place would be to look up any of the GQ photo shoots of the various cast members of The Good Place, because all of them are, it's a sitcom, so they're kind of goofy acting in the show, but then when you see them in their GQ spread, it's like, oh shit, okay, yeah. Jason?
Yeah. I was not expecting Jason. The show also is, if you're a philosophy nerd,
yeah,
this show gets into some very heavy philosophical concepts.
If you ever just wanted a brief philosophy primer,
like, hey,
tune in.
I want to learn about Kierkegaard without seeming pretentious.
Yeah, like how can I learn about Kant in 22 minutes with some jokes sprinkled in
while retaining my dignity and sense of humanity? I'm like, please watch The Good Place. Well,
I don't really know that I have any personal picks at the moment. I don't know. I've mainly just been watching the stuff that I teach.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I've been watching the stuff that I teach. I've been reading the stuff for the classes that I take. Watch Queer Eye, I guess, on Netflix.
Well,
that's my completely non-genre recommendation, is to check out the new Queer Eye on Netflix.
Well, you have a personal connection.
Yeah, so my friend Jonathan Van Ness is actually one of the new Fab Five. And I guess if I'm gonna just plug all of his stuff, a more genre twist would be that if you haven't checked out his web series Game of Thrones, you absolutely should if you're a Game of Thrones fan.
Unless you're like me and takes it too seriously.
Yeah,
So I
so
don't like to see jokes.
Jonathan, his Game of Thrones series, so he is a stylist based in LA mainly. So the Game of Thrones series is basically him doing various celebrities' hair while they talk about Game of Thrones.
I will say one of his greatest lines was from the most recent season when the Theon's Greyjoy's uncle crashes his boat into the other boat, and Jonathan's like, and then the 30-second to Mars party bus shows up.
Nope. The 30 Seconds to Mars party bus shows up. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, he's great. That web series is amazing, and I'm only, or I get, you've only watched one episode, so I'm only about halfway into this season of Queer
I've been
Eye.
getting frequent messages about emotions from you because it's well, the other night you were over at my place and you were watching it on your laptop and I was playing Doom. So it was the
Yeah.
duality of man. And so I would look over from Curb Stomping Demons and you had your Hal Holbrook eyes on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I would say,
For those of you that don't know, Hal Holbrook is America's
our wettest-eyed actor. It just always looks like he's kind of on the brink of tears a little bit. Yeah, so I'm only 4 episodes into the show, but so far I've been, like, really pleasantly surprised as somebody who was a fan of the first Queer Eye for the Straight, the original Queer Eye for the Straight Guy.
Was it like this?
No, actually. I think from what I recall, and I haven't seen it since it, was originally on.
I know nothing.
But it was the same general setup in that there were 5 different gay men who were, they each had like a specialty area.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I recall from the first episode, or the first series that is, it was a bit more in the vein of like makeover shows.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit more like, oh, this is what's wrong with you. Like we need to fit.
Like I remember seeing like snippets and just seeing like, oh, that seems kind of like airy, like disposable.
Yeah.
And then I watched my first episode of the new series tonight, and it's like it was all about this guy coming out to his mom, and it was like. It was emotional.
Yeah, so I guess the main thing would be that, like, since they've dropped the whole for the straight guy part of the title, they now are able to have people of all, orientations. So yeah, we watched an episode earlier tonight that was like the Fab Five dealing with a gay guy who had not yet come out to some of the members of his family.
I liked that it had. I was not expecting it to have like such heart.
Yeah, like I think the main sort of difference that I would point to would be that I think that now a lot of pretty much every episode I've watched so far, their whole sort of underlying thing has been, it's not really just about like an exterior makeover or anything, or like telling people like how could you be wearing all these shitty clothes, or how could you not be like doing whatever stuff with your like hair and face and whatever. But it's like we just want to like tell you, or like make yourself a priority. Yeah, the whole idea of like, it sounds like kind of cheesy at this point, but like self-care, like how to take care of yourself. It doesn't come
across as cheesy in the show. Like it's surprisingly like grounded.
Yeah, and the sort of like main thing about the first season, at least, is that all of the episodes are in and around Atlanta, Georgia. So there are a fair amount of episodes where they're outside of the metropolitan area and they're dealing with, like, obviously guys that are in the really deep south. They just had like the episode before the one that we watched tonight was a cop who had like all of this Trump stuff in his house.
What?
And you know, they don't ever really want to like they don't ever really engage about like, so on the level of like, so why do you want to take away my rights?
Yeah.
But I mean, the sort of like, I think, argument for the importance of the first Queer Eye series was that, you know, it was in many ways kind of a way for people who would have no contact with gay people in their everyday life to sort of see these sort of aspirational figures and not just gay men as like stereotypes or things to laugh at, but like
actual people to interact with.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, even just like from interacting with them, like they're really presented as like experts in their field, you know? And it's not just the sort of things like, oh, fashion and grooming, but it's like, oh, I know a lot of stuff about, you know, like how to fix your apartment, like I'm gonna make over your whole fucking house and stuff. So anyway, I'll just say that I'm really enjoying the new series of Queer Eye so far, and that's only partially because my friend Jonathan is in it.
It's quite a connection.
Yeah. So I guess that's my personal pick.
Well, at least we ended on two personal picks that make us feel good.
Yeah, so we talked for a while about a really terrible movie, and then we got to do some uplifting stuff.
Yeah, we got to end on a positive note. All right. Well.
Also, we got a message from Lynn while we were recording this episode. The paper that she presented was on cabin horror, and I believe that's the paper that she wrote about a year and a half ago.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
be looking forward to
maybe
hearing
next
about
time
that.
you can ask her for the synopsis
I
of
will.
her cabin horror paper.
We'll get into it. All right. As always, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Keel behaved like a man demented, obsessed, utterly lost.